You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for a successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast. And I have a very special guest with me today, Sue Rusalen. She is a retired hygienist and founder of Hygiene Hackers. And Sue, welcome to this podcast episode.
Thank you, Julie, and thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. We caught up at ADX. We had been flirting with each other online on Facebook and everything, and through mutual appreciation of each other through the articles that we've written. So it was great to physically meet you at ADX, but you're telling me about this magnificent new project that you're working on. But first of all, for all of our listeners, can you tell us a little bit about your history?
Okay, well, I started my life after dropping out of university. I started my mathematical science degree, and I just was far too young, didn't know where I was going. I thought I'll just have a couple of years off. And I went and worked for this fabulous dentist in 1984 as his dental assistant. My parents weren't very happy that I dropped out of uni to become a dental assistant, but it led me into this world that I've never left. And so I was very, very lucky that the guy that employed me, he had 3 hygienists. He was the first guy in Australia to bring the CEREC machine in. We used to attend amazing practice training. I don't know if anyone remembers Omar Reed and Ken James, all these really cool people way back in the early 1980s. Most of you would never have been born. But
I may have been.
Barely. By the time I was 21, I was a fully qualified dental hygienist. And back then there was only one school in Australia, and that was in my hometown in Adelaide. And South Australia, believe it or not, has been always right at the forefront of promoting dental hygienists and prevention and periodontal management in practices. And I became the very first outback dental hygienist. That was my first job at 21. So I, got in my little Mazda, I think it was, Mitsubishi Colt, I can't remember. And I used to belt up the road. I think I spent more on the D batteries in my ghetto blaster than I did in petrol, but it was to keep me awake on the 6-hour drive to Broken Hill.
You are bringing back so much terminology that I grew up with. Ghetto blaster, that's hilarious.
I know, and I used to keep myself awake by listening to this band called ZZ Top, which was
the Beards.
The big head-thumping band from back then, but, I was petrified I'd fall asleep at the wheel. Anyway, cut a very long story short, I've now been in dentistry as a dental hygienist, practice manager and consultant in outback New South Wales, Switzerland, the USA, New Zealand, and, of course, Sydney, and then back to Adelaide where I am now.
Wowee, that is extraordinary amount of experience that you've had. Very briefly, Switzerland, is hygiene when you were working there? What years were you working there in hygiene?
When I was 27, it was 1994 and 1995. I spent 2 years working in a Swiss periodontal clinic. I think I was the second dental hygienist from Australia to go there. It's a very family-centric country and very Catholic. And they didn't have childcare. And with the majority of the hygiene workforce being female, when ladies got pregnant and had their children, they essentially retired. And in fact, the whole tax setup there is designed for mums to stay at home. And it's interesting. I was quite judgmental about that. I thought, oh my God, you poor people. But, when you have thinkers in residence come into countries around the world, one of the first things that they say is, the most balanced societies are those that have their mothers at home with their children for 3 years or more. So it's something that I paid attention to when I had my son. It's a long story, but, I was determined to be with him in his junior years as much as possible. So, yeah, Switzerland, I had to learn the language. Well, there was 4 languages, but, 2 of them, one was Swiss German, Schweizerdeutsch, and the other one I spoke a bit of, apart from English, was Italian. And having an Italian background helped somewhat. But I was very fortunate because 2 of the languages I learned in high school were German and Italian. So, I got to brush the cobwebs off of that. So I can explain a root canal to you in Schweizerdeutsch, but that I can't cook in the language. It's funny, I would go to work and I'd have, all of the words around endophiles, scalar tips, all of those things in Swiss German, but I don't have cooking equipment words. I just don't know what they are. So I'd go home and speak in English. So, yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. When you said you could explain a root canal to me in German, I thought to myself, there'd be patients out there that have explained to them in English and they'd think it sounds like German to me.
I don't think I could do it anymore, but yes, it's eine Wurzelbehandlung. So that's a root canal for all of you people in, if you want to know what it means. It's funny, the doctor I work for, her name was Dr. Borden, which translates to Dr. Drill in English. So I was working for Dr. Drill in, anyway, it was a wonderful time working there. The reason I went there was, I guess before you have kids, you want to kind of experience the world a bit. At the time we went to 33 countries. I took my then husband with me. He became my Putzfrau, which is my home cleaning lady. I don't know if he cleaned very much, but we had a fabulous time. I came home essentially to reignite his career and have children. But anything I could do to make my life really exciting, I'm just going to chase it. So. Yeah.
Oh, well done. Well, that brings us beautifully to what you're doing right now, because you and I had a very detailed discussion around what you're doing right now, and it's going to revolutionize that preventive side of dentistry here in Australia. So talk to us more about that.
Okay, I'll try really hard to take breath as I speak to you, because once I get on a roll, please interrupt me because I get excited about this. So at about the age of 22, 23, I was, it really started back then that I saw a patient once that he bled like mad. It was that typical patient that comes across to you that has never seen a hygienist. And, I'm doing the internal eye roll thinking, oh my God, why hasn't this person seen a hygienist before? 6 or 7 millimetre pockets, bleeding everywhere, crazy. I did, within my limited skill range, what I could do back then, it was ultrasonic hand scaling. We didn't have Arrestin and, all of the tools that we have today. I did my best, gave him my, bit of Butler's Prophy paste at the end and bit of oral hygiene instruction, and I'll see you in 3 months. And he didn't come back 3 months later, and I'm sitting there all judgmental again, rolling my eyes, thinking, crazy man. I think I had other swear words coming out of me. He was only 36. And I thought, how can he be getting around like this, and how can he be ignoring his health? Maybe I haven't done such a great job, whatever it was. But a week later, I discovered that he'd actually passed away from a massive heart attack. And the reason he didn't return was because he'd had a massive heart attack. And I didn't know, but I knew intuitively that the two went together. What was going on in his mouth and what he died of must have been related somehow. And so all I ever did was pester people every time I went to a periodontal society meeting, or, I would just ask, what do you think about this? Do you think there's some connection? If we had a cardiologist around, I'd be asking the same questions. And of course, we're going back to 1988, 89, 90 back then, and I just didn't have the answers. Now, it always gurgled away in my mind. I've got these folders full of journal entries and clinical studies where, I started to collect things to actually support the whole oral systemic argument. And I'm not one of those woo-woo people that, certainly if you are someone that's obese, overweight, you're going to Macca's 8 times a day, and that's going to kill you before the bugs on your teeth, perhaps. But, it's a combination of a whole heap of things. It's really difficult. Well, we can't control our DNA. We can control our diets and our lifestyles, but we're not really great at it. But one thing we can control is the bacteria that's actually living in our mouth. And as all of you would know, is, no one is born with, nasty bacteria in their mouth. It's acquired from their mums, their mothers, lovers, and dogs. And
it doesn't sound all that attractive, the last one. I'm not quite sure what people are doing with their dogs.
I think I must have kissed a few dogs in my life.
All the lovely dog lovers out there.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. It's the parasites in their mouth. But the interesting thing is dental people, hygienists and dentists, have really nasty biofilms. So I'll get to that in a second. I I had this patient that made me think, oh my God, what's going on here? And I kept it in my mind and worked on that for my entire hygiene career. And then in 2019, I was in the US at a seminar. By then, I had almost left the profession completely, and I was consulting and helping practices grow. And I'm really I'm quite good at helping practices make a lot of money and actually build their businesses, let's put it that way. I felt that I only want to do that with people if they're treating their people with a really elevated level of care. You know, to me, it can't be just soulless. I can't just walk out the door and teach you how to make money. I have to make sure it happens with heart. And in 2019, I'm at a seminar in the US that I had spoken at 2015, and I ran into this dentist who has 10 hygienists.
Wow, wait.
Yeah, so Dr. Mike Subiak, who lives in Camarillo in Texas. It's like those meetings of the minds. And, you know, we sat down at the half hour at the end of the seminar and just chatting about, we were chatting about Dr. Sunik's product, Channel D.
Ah, fantastic.
Because he loved the oral systemic videos that Michael had actually made. And he signed up straight away and put it in his practice. He said, this is gold. So there's a plug for Michael Cernick. He's another amazing man that we both love. Anyway, so I sat down with Mike. We had a bit of a chat, and then he whipped out of his bag this book called Hygiene Superstar, and he handed it to me and said, "Dear Sue, be a hygiene superstar. I think you'll enjoy the read." And we pretty much parted ways, and that was the moment that my life changed. I devoured that book on the way home. It's a very small, light read. My copy has notes scribbled all the way through it. I have hundreds of them around, and every single person that I can find, I hand a copy to.
Me included, so thank you. I have read it myself as well.
You have read it?
Yes, fantastic.
Look, it's time that, you know, we all woke up a little bit about being true healers in our profession. And I think if you look at the history of dentistry and how it's unfolded over the last century, we've got to really have a look at how things led to where they are today. And I feel at the moment we're in a very heavy, technical, perhaps not reactive space. We are fairly proactive. You know, so we went from a sort of more reactive type dental model to a bit more of a proactive dental model, but we're very much in the engineering space. So I'm trying to encourage everyone to drift towards the proactive side of being a dentist, but more towards being a healer. You know, I think the general public don't see dentists as real doctors. You know, I think we had a bit of a laugh about that, Julie. You know, I was talking with another friend of mine recently, and there was a football game in the US, and it was the doctors versus the dentists in a football match.
Wildly different people, obviously, in their minds.
Well, the doctors called themselves the RDs, and the doctors were called the dentists were called the JDs. So it was the real doctors versus the just dentists. Now, this was only a month or two ago. It's horrible.
That is bad.
It still happens. But, you know, I sit there and think, I want to see a time when dentists really own the degree that they've got and become the real healers that stand alongside people in medicine to deliver oral health care. Because, as we all know, the mouth is the window to the rest of us. If we look at that healing space, we can see so much in the mouth. You know, it's airway, it's function, it's biofilm, it's all of those things that we're kind of overlooking. And so as I'm reading through Hygiene Superstar, and there is a podcast called Hygiene Superstar run by the same man, my face just lit up and I went, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. I kind of got home and started emailing Mike like a crazy woman, saying, where did you learn all this? Where did you get all this from? How can we? This is the hygienist I always wanted to be. And I was just about to retire from dental hygiene, and I thought, oh my God, why is this coming so late in my life? But I realised that it's something that has to be shared, and what better time and what better person to do it. So for me, I've taken up the challenge of everything I've learned in that space, and I'm delivering programs around Australia how to become that healing dentist. And, the irony is there is so much production and profit to be made in that space. And what I've been able to do, delivering very simple protocols to the whole prevention and hygiene and perio model. It's not being a periodontist, it's just this is general dentistry. Dentists are able to profit really, really well. And so through meeting Dr. Tubiak, I finally got onto a gentleman called Professor Thomas Larkin, who's in Kentucky. And Tom and I have never actually met in person. I was meant to meet him last March, but then COVID came along. But we have worked our butts off to actually get this program to Australia. So Tom created a protocol back in 1989 off of all of the work of a Dr. Paul Keyes. Look, there's a massive amount of history in all of that. It's just really interesting. But I've taken all of Tom's work and we've brought it to Australia. I called it the Larkin protocol because as a nod to him, he didn't want me to. He's actually quite shy about all those things, but I said, too bad. Tom built his first dental practice in third year of dental school.
Wow, that's early.
He's a real entrepreneur, but he's very down to earth. He doesn't actually practice as a dentist anymore, but he sits on the board of a few of his brilliant students' practices. They've also built amazing practices. So one of those such practices and those students, he started with that person 2 years ago in a very rundown practice that was turning over $100,000. They're now hitting close to 2 million and they have just employed their fifth hygienist within 2 years.
Wow, way.
Yeah. So, Julie, I know there's a whole world out there of people that don't believe the dentist hygiene model can work. I'm living proof of it. I've been in this profession nearly 40 years now. I've only ever worked for $3 million plus practices, and that's what I'm out helping to create. But I'm doing it with the most elevated level of care, not complicated level of care. It's very simple, but it has a buy-in with patients that's, well over 90-95% retention.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
So I know that we're a bit time limited because you've got another appointment to get to. If you can give us a short snapshot of what the Larkin protocol means to a dental practice, what it looks like, I'd love to then later on get you back onto the program and we speak more intimately about it.
Sure, I'd love to. As you can tell, I've got ideas that just bubble out of my head nonstop. So I apologise in advance if I'm a bit crazy because sometimes I just can't get the words out. There's so many there. So
they're good.
So the difference between a Treadmill Hygiene appointment and a Larkin protocol appointment is probably what we need to discuss. So if I go back a little bit further, first of all, there's a lot of dentists in Australia who still do their own cleans in inverted commas. And I'm not even going to go down that path because I'll have steam coming out of my ears if I start going down that path. If you want to willfully lower your hourly rate and lower your standard of care in your practice, you do it yourself. I don't know that dentists should not be doing hygiene appointments.
That's going to be a whole podcast episode, all of it, all on its own, Sue.
Well, it was important at the start that I said I had a background in mathematics because I'm a statistical nerd and I keep stats on all of this stuff. I was the kid when I was 11 sitting in front of the TV. I hate cricket, but I love the statistics around cricket. So I've got all these old exercise books. Makes my husband very excited. All of
different strokes for different folks.
He's a cricket nut. Anyway, I've got all of these stats on Dennis Lilly, and I know all you young kids have got no idea who they all are, and the Chappell brothers, and so I used to sit there and I didn't care for the cricket. I mean, I did love sport, but not that much. But I love the stats. And so I've actually got lots and lots of research on if a hygienist does this is how much your practice makes versus if a dentist makes it. Anyway, that's another conversation. But the general hygienist or oral health therapist of practice, in my belief, does what we call treadmill hygiene. And for those of you listening, it's the old 114, 112. The amount of under and undiagnosed perio in this country is outstanding. It's just astronomical. So conservatively, periodontal disease sits somewhere between 30 and 70%, depending on the age group. So I sort of agree to lean to the lower end for the sake of, not having an argument with people. And I say, look, let's say a third of your practice has periodontal disease. Firstly, you've got to find it and diagnose it. The second step is actually explaining it to the patient and getting them motivated and getting them on board. And thirdly, it's about impacting them in such a way that they want to constantly return and come back, and they're not going to cancel their appointment just because, the kids' birthday parties come up or whatever. So that whole hygiene model, the treadmill hygiene model, which is the 114-121, I feel is very broken. And people will cancel their appointments at the drop of a hat. And it's, it's an ongoing, constant problem that dental practices have. The other thing that they constantly have is they don't diagnose perio enough. So we have this thing called a disease repair model. When I look at dental practices, generally what they do is they look for disease, they hunt for disease, and then they repair it. Is the tooth broken? Let's fix it. Is it decayed? Let's fix it. The proactive side steps in when you find a crack in a tooth that hasn't actually become anything nasty yet or hasn't become symptomatic. And that's when we go into the more proactive part of doing dentistry. But most dentists are disease repair model. When it comes to periodontal disease, is there plaque? Is there bleeding? Is there calculus? Then I'll fix it. Is there bone loss? So what we're looking for in practices is evidence of disease that's already there. What Larkin protocol does is it's a risk assessment model. So what we do is we take a sample of bacteria from the mouth, a biofilm, generally from the distal of a lower 7. We pop it onto a microscope slide with a special liquid, and we train our dentists and dental hygienists how to assess what's going on in that patient's mouth. So we're looking for different types of bacteria, spirochetes, rods, spinning rods, trichomonads, amoeba, not only what type of bacteria, the load. Now, we can't tell much from that other than there's a lot of activity or there's not, but if you see the patient's face, the minute they see this thing land on the screen, you've got this emotional bridge which takes a very passive hunt for that passive appointment where a patient is actually sitting there waiting to be told what's wrong with them, to this shared hunt for this nasty bacteria. Now, we've got all the research around what that bacteria is doing, and every day we're getting closer and closer to using the word causative. And now we're still saying the word associative, but a lot of the study with Porphyromonas gingivalis and, all the different types of, the AAs, the TFs, the TDs, the FNs, all of those things can actually be measured, and that's a whole different test. And that can't be done in Australia at the moment, but we're working on that as well. So all we do is show the patients what lives in their mouth. Now, the first time that I had it done for me, when I said I felt like I'd kissed a few dogs.
That was the evidence.
Oh, my God. My own biofilm was disgusting. And Tom reminded me that dentists and dental hygienists have this really bad biofilm. And I go, well, why? And, let's think about COVID. It's airborne, all this stuff that we're breathing in. How many times did I pull my mask down and have a bit of an inhale or leaned over patients? I don't know. And then, I look at my dad and his periodontal disease is Italian. It's just atrocious. I'm sure we've shared the same knife and fork. This is a sexually not that I had sex with my dad, but it's a
nice clarification there.
But it's another form. It's
still a family program.
Yeah, it's an STD. It can be passed, and when we start thinking about it on this level, we go, "Oh my God, you're seeing this stuff on the screen." It's basically a risk assessment. So it's like going to the doctor. The doctor doesn't wait for you to have a heart attack before they treat you. They test your cholesterol. So we're doing a risk assessment of the person's biofilm.
That's a really lovely distinction, that we're going from the engineer type that you call the engineering type, which is we're fixing problems once they are becoming evident, or the proactive, that we can see something that's going to contribute to a problem happening, and so we're going to make sure that we treat that now so we don't suffer the repercussions. But that's right. With your heart, we look at the risk factors and try to reduce down those rather than wait for the heart attack to happen and then do something about it. That's a fantastic distinction.
Well, the thing is, the great joy comes when a very simple test that's less than a 25-cent test, it's done with a very specific microscope. That's a bit more than 25 cents, but it's done with a very specific microscope. But we take this very small sample of plaque, and we've found 8-year-olds, 22-year-olds that are well on their way to serious bone loss and periodontal disease. There's people like me who I would go to the dentist, and my mouth, in their minds and mine, was perfect. But the amount of spirochetes that are actually swimming around in my mouth, it was revolting. So then I lined up my whole family. My son was bad. His girlfriend was disgusting. My husband's not so bad. The two kids. A
whole different way of being introduced into a new family.
Yeah, well. Hey, Hannah. This is a game the whole family can play. Anyway, but straight away, I've got these two 22-year-olds so engaged in their oral health. Hannah's raced back to Sydney to actually find someone who can do guided biofilm therapy. I mean, she could have had it done here, but we're in lockdown. My son does not miss his dental appointments anymore. It's none of this meh, Me, I've gone from twice a year maybe because I'm so perfect to I attend now every 3 months. And it's funny because I go and see these hygienists that don't even know what I'm talking about. And I just say, get this biofilm out of here, blast me, do the whole guided biofilm therapy. I go home and rinse with my ozonated water rinsers. I've started tongue brushing. And so Larkin protocol starts with the video microscope test, which actually attracts a code, an 041 code, with itemised. Some health funds pay, some don't. And I sort of say, just don't charge for it. This is just a routine. If you come in and you've got a broken tooth and we repair it and fix it, I say to my young dentists, the very next thing you do is a biofilm sample, show them what's in their mouth, and then you don't have to search for a reason to actually get them back. They see that and they book in straight away. So the minute people see this bacteria sitting on the screen, you've got this emotional buy-in. What does Tom call it? He calls it the epiphany bridge.
Oh, I love it.
Patients have this epiphany and they go, oh, my God, that's in my mouth. Is that why I'm getting my teeth cleaned? Yes, it is. And from that point on, you've actually got a patient for life. And we work together to show you how to get that biofilm load down. We had a patient in Sydney the other day. I've actually got it in about 9 or 10 practices in Australia at the moment. And one of the practices sent me a video film of a amoeba that's swimming around in their patient's mouth. This patient has no bleeding, no pockets, but there's this really nasty amoeba that's swimming around. Now, I have to tell you about that because people go, well, why do we bother if there's no bleeding and no bone loss? Amoeba do not live in an environment which is healthy. The environment must be unhealthy for it to be there. Now, what impact is it having on the rest of the body? Well, we're not 100% sure. We think we know, but I'm not about to wait 30 years with those spirochetes swimming around. Imagine if you've got Porphyromonas gingivalis in there. They've actually shown that in the brain, it causes Alzheimer's in mice and rats and all those sorts of things. It's only a matter of time, I think, before the link is actually made. Don't forget, a lot of this stuff, this video microscopy, sorry, I can't even say it today, video microscopy started in 1970 with Dr. Paul Keyes. This stuff's been around for 50-something years.
It's well researched, well studied. So that image of the biofilm to the patient is really the same kind of buy-in that people get when they see that huge crack on the intraoral camera image, that it's all big, right there in your face. You just can't ignore it as a patient.
Well, remember when dental practices didn't even have intraoral cameras? And like the first ones that came out, we kind of wheeled out, on this great big trolley. It's a bit like the first computer I worked on.
The clarity was terrible.
Yeah, the first computer at Adelaide Uni, it took up a whole room. But, now they sit in our palms. It's fascinating. But, there was a time when you would never have had a dental practice in Australia that even had a camera. I know Dr. Cernick raced off and got one from some gastroenterologist that, a camera that would go down or up.
Depending on your luck.
And he said, don't worry, I washed it first. But intraoral cameras have become mainstream. It's just a really effective way to actually show patients what's going on in their own mouth. if you could see the crack on filling in growing in real time, like you actually, in sped up time, not real time, you'd be going, oh my God, get that tooth ground straight away. But the thing is with the video microscope or the microscope, it's an intraoral camera on steroids. That's what
It seems like it. It's really showing the patient something that hygienists have battled with showing them in the past because they haven't been experiencing any specific symptoms. And I would imagine if you're finding this in young kids, young adults, how many times as a hygienist did you have a perio patient come in with bone loss, substantial bone loss, and thought to yourself, if only I could have gotten to you sooner? Well, this is getting to them sooner.
It is getting to them sooner. And, if I had this stuff around when I was 23, 24, and I managed to take a biofilm sample of my patient that died. Look, I'm not saying that I'm Florence Nightingale. I'm about to start saving people's lives because of it. But it's, if you can get that bacterial load down, I've actually got some clients that place a lot of implants and they've taken on this protocol. Now they're testing every patient before they place the implant, which I think is a really responsible way of addressing their patients. Why you wouldn't see a surgeon putting in a brand new knee into an infected wound on someone's right leg. And this stuff's all happening at a microscopic level. And so we can disrupt this biofilm, we can budget and we can get rid of it. And we can, you might never get rid of every spirochete in your mouth, but there's this threshold of disease when the amount of bacteria goes over that threshold, and it can be measured and it can be visually assessed, we know when we've got health and when we've got disease. And so our goal is to work with our patients to actually get their biofilm bacterial load levels down and disrupt it often enough that the bacteria hasn't got a chance in hell of hanging around in the oral cavity. And if it's not living there, it won't then proliferate and go to other areas of the body. And so if you go back to what I said at the start about, being a real doctor, the dentist, we have this opportunity now to actually test the biofilm, look at it in a very, very simple setting. It's a 25-cent 2-minute test under the microscope. Have a look at it, know what you're looking for. Dr. Larkin's been amazing. He actually simplifies things so well. He actually became Professor of the Year at the college that he was at because he has this ability to educate people. And you should have him on your show. He's just got, and same with Dr. Subiak, they just got those caramel voices. They speak so clearly and succinctly. I've just got a girl crush on both of them. They just
I love it. I was certainly
I know they got beautiful voices and they're just such lovely men. But, Tom's broken it down. We've got this whole protocol where we sit down and say, well, where does this person fit? Well, they've got this, they've got that. They're just a level 1. This person is a really high risk patient and they're sitting in level 4. So they get the whole protocol. And the protocol then is, and this is also really interesting, Julie, if you have a plate of spaghetti and you've got all that red sauce in there, you don't walk over to the sink and start cleaning it by scratching it with a knife.
That's true.
That's how we clean teeth, right?
Yeah.
So what we're doing. What you do is this is what guided biofilm therapy is. You go in and you disclose the tooth. You disrupt it with guided biofilm therapy, which is essentially water, air, and a powder spray, and you clean the teeth very simply. You're disrupting the biofilm. So we teach people simpler, easier, and far more comfortable methods of cleaning teeth. And then I can hear everyone saying, oh, yeah, but that machine costs X, Y, and Z. Well, I'm sorry, but I know how much a CEREC machine costs. So if you're actually buying CEREC machines in your practice, you can buy about 20 EMS machines. And I just think every practice should have them. They're amazing. Look, it's a guided biofilm machine. There are different brands around. I'm a little bit, I lean towards the Swiss ones. I've got the soft spot for the Swiss technology, being, the ex-Swiss hygienist. I love the stuff. I love their education, everything that supports it. It is the only way you can clean implants as well. So the protocol is essentially GBT first. So it's not ultrasonic hand scale and then prophy. It's prophy first. It's the guided biofilm therapy first. You then find you have very little ultrasonic scaling and hand scaling to do. It doesn't replace that. I have to stress that. It doesn't replace it. But 4 out of 8 patients a day, you can virtually get away with not having to hand scale or ultrasonic because it's so effective, supragingivally and subgingivally. Then we follow up with any sort of antimicrobial that we can use, but we treat the biofilm as an infection and an inflammation, and we disrupt the biofilm. We use lots of antimicrobials like ozone water, diode lasers, all of those other sorts of things. You can take this as far as you want to go. You can even just manage this with your ordinary ultrasonic hand scalers and Profi. You don't have to have all the fancy stuff. But what we say is start with the slide first, do the risk assessment and work out where you are from there. You will get patient buy-in like no other form of dentistry that I've seen in over 40 years, or 38 years. I shouldn't exaggerate.
It sounds pretty extraordinary. And a practice that adopts this kind of technology, it's shifting its whole focus and its whole approach towards patients. I mean, prevention is far better than cure in every aspect of our bodies, including our mouths.
Yeah, listen, you're saying all the right things. Prevention has not been sexy. It's never been considered sexy. People just don't even want to go there, have the conversation. And, you know, let's face it, dentists think that sitting down with, and hygienists sitting down with someone for 20 minutes talking about prevention is just a complete waste of money. But if you can find a third of your practice with periodontal disease or risk of periodontal disease, you don't ever have to advertise again and go out and, you know, get new patients. I don't suggest that. I know this sounds crazy, but the practices I work with, I don't really care about new patient flow because there is so much work sitting inside a practice that's not done or undone or whatever. This just gets these patients to really understand why they need to be there. And you can truly look after this awesome group of people that are your, you know, current clients. They will go home and rave to their friends, rave to their family, talk to their kids. And that's where new patient flow will come from. And I can tell you this, if you've had this protocol done on you and the testing, if you go to another practice that doesn't do it, the light bulb's going to come on. How come you're not testing my biofilm?
Yeah, and they feel undertreated.
Yeah. How come you don't have that nice warm water spa machine? How come you don't, you know, and they'll just scoot right back there. I know, look, I'm converted. I don't go anywhere now that doesn't have this protocol. It's just, I have my own microscope.
Just you talking about the tooth cleaning process, and I will let you go soon.
Oh, no, don't.
I'm so thankful of you staying on for a bit longer. But just you talking about the tooth cleaning process that you've described, that's something patients will come back for. They hate coming back for those painful, sensitive scale and cleans that they've been used to.
Yeah, look, there's certainly a place for local anaesthetic when you do a lot of that deep work. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that someone with a 7 or 8 millimetre pocket can just have a bit of water sandblasted and powder sandblasted, it's just going to go away. But there is a perio tip with this machine. But the water in the units is warm, for starters, in both the piezo side and the powder side. It's just a lovely experience. And the other thing that you can do with it, which people don't realise, and I just pushed this machine left, right and said, I'm like one of their like unpaid BDMs or something, but you can clean tongues. People don't realise, and I'm ashamed to say as a dental hygienist, I did not recommend tongue cleaning to probably more than 24 patients in my entire career. It's like you get out of dental hygiene school and you never want to disclose again. It's just all too hard. You can't get that stuff off. And you just kind of go, oh, tongue cleaning, makes me a bit sick. You know, I wouldn't live another day without tongue cleaning. When you see what actually comes off and you scrape it out, if you put that under a microscope slide, oh my God.
I don't think I want to.
I know. So, you know, I was even talking to Craig Erskine-Smith, Dr. Erskine-Smith, Erskine Dental. They've got fabulous tongue cleaners. And I just say part of people's protocol has to be tongue cleaning. And the really cool thing when you go to the dentist, if they have some sort of guided biofilm therapy EMS machine or a Mectron machine, whichever one they go with, clean the patient's tongue. It's painless. I've got an aunt with severe recession, and she just loves me to bit that I've actually referred her to someone in Newcastle who she can finally start having her teeth cleaned without having to have, 35 injections every time she goes. So it's a great experience at the dentist.
That is absolutely tremendous. I do want to get you back on for a couple of reasons. One, to speak about how the Larkin protocol can be rolled out in a dental practice and they can shift their focus and still not just remain profitable, but actually even more profitable than before, but also talk about your passion also to really boost hygiene therapy within Australia.
Yeah, no, I'd love to talk about that. Just touching on those two things before I race off. And the reason I'm racing off, sorry, everybody, is I've got a gorgeous friend of mine who wants to introduce Larkin protocol into her practice. And I have lent my microscope to a very dear friend up the road. And he's on the condition that I can come and use it when I need to. And he just wasn't so sure about this. And I said, look, you have my microscope for 6 months and you let me know how you go. Well, he had it for a week, and he went out and bought an EMS machine straight away. He's employed a hygienist. He's just skyrocketing. So it's at his practice. It's all set up. So I'm just going to visit him. But with production, I've actually been able to manage. So last October, September, October, I had a webinar with 30 or 40 dentists, and I asked 5 people to step forward and actually test this protocol in Australia. I knew that it worked in the US with Tom. I thought it would work here. I've converted all of the billing, the invoicing, the coding to the Australian version so that, people know how they can bill and they can code. And so I actually had 5 people put their hand up. In fact, I've now got, I think, 9, not 10, pretty sure it's 9. And I've measured where they were and where they are now from a financial point of view, from a retention point of view, and from a dollar point of view. Now, I don't have all of the results back. I have a few. One really outstanding one is a practice in Tasmania who has tripled their hygiene production since its introduction. They went from having a hygienist just 2 days a week, earning about $10,000 a month. So the daily production was about $1,000 to $1,100. That hygienist now pulls in 2.5 a day. She's now working 4 days a week. She's booked out till October, and they're about to employ their second hygienist. So by the end of this year, their practice will go from a $90,000 hygiene department in 2020 to a $600,000 hygiene department at the end of this year. I did a projection, again with my nerdy numbers, that by the end of next year, they would have a close to $1 million hygiene department. Now, if you think about that from a leverage point of view, as a dentist who barely has to step in the door to have all of this magic happening behind him, to have $1 million coming in the door, and you've got this amazing elevated level of care with your patients who are being all risk assessed, they're being tested prior to any of their implants. His results are their results are outstanding. They're very coachable. They're gorgeous people. The whole team has embraced this, and the conversation and the communication around how you communicate to the patients. The hygienist is out of control. Every day she rings me and she goes, Suze, I wagging my tail every day. She's a real pet. She goes, Suze, if I had 2 tails, I'd be wagging both of them. She's just embraced it. And that, look, if I can find 100 practices in Australia to actually do this, I go from being the hygienist that impacted maybe 2,000 people in her lifetime to the hygienist that impacts 100,000 lives. And that's where I want to go. And to me, it's a win-win-win for everyone. It's a win for the practice. It's a win for the patient. It's an absolute win for the hygienist. It makes dentistry fun again. And it is the hygienist that I always wanted to be. And I think it will make dentists the dentists that they always wanted to be. And that's where my passion in this lies.
Wonderful. Pretty powerful to come to this world to be a healer, and now you feel like you're doing that and creating the space for others to be able to do it too with the Larkin protocol. Yeah,
well, I didn't invent this. I didn't create it. But I think, one of my one of my attributes is that I'm very good at connecting people and finding people and networking and, you know, the crazy woman that's, you know, off chatting everyone up in the corner and, you know, I just love people. But if I can find a way to bring people together and, you know, when I met, you know, like meeting you know, I never close the doors on anyone. It's just like, come into my life. Let's see how we can work together because, you know, what do they say? If you walk alone, you walk fast. But if you go with someone, you go a lot further. Is that the saying? I've probably got it all wrong.
I've never heard of it before, but I love it, even the way you said it.
So, you know, you can produce and absolutely escalate and skyrocket anything when you work with other people. You know, if I have this thing about collective intelligence, if you get a whole group of people and you come together and you all know a little bit, what you can produce is amazing. So, you know, I've come across these amazing humans in the US and here, and I'm just putting them all together and going, well, let's see what magic we can create. So if anyone wants to know more, we have a Facebook group, not page. I have the page as well. Just ignore the page. I have a Facebook group called Hygiene Hackers. Just join and have a look at what we're doing. You know, I've got everyone posting their video microscope samples up there. And if they want to know more, just go to hygienhackers.com. It's a crazy name. I never know what to call businesses, I think. But, you know, people...
I like it. It's sticky. Hygiene Hackers. I love it.
Yeah, we're hacking the hygiene, you know, and I feel like what we have done is we've really shortcutted this whole treatment. You know, I don't have to sit with young hygienists anymore and explain to them, this is how you motivate a patient. You know, I remember writing a essay in 1987 when I was studying dental hygiene on how to motivate a patient. And it was the most difficult thing that I think I ever wrote. And it had to be, you know, so many pages. And I remember writing it in the biggest handwriting so I stretched it out. We can do it now with the 25-cent test. Yeah. And, you know, it's like, I just can't wait. I've actually got a lot of friends who are working in universities around Australia. I can't wait to actually, look, microscopes aren't new. They're not new. I've mucked around on them and went, oh, have a look at that. Oh, that's interesting. And then we parked them in the corner and did nothing with it. But if you get the right microscope, you understand what you're looking for, someone coaches you and trains you how to assess, they're an extremely powerful tool and they cut down any explanation time. So does the GBT. Like, I'm not suggesting for a minute that anyone cuts their hygienist appointments. I'm going to smack you if you do, because there's lots of other reasons they're in there. But it just makes everyone's life so much more fun and far more effective.
Wonderful. Well, it has a large impact on the business, a large impact on the hygienist, and helps patients be healthier. What more could you want? Thank you so much for your time today, Sue. And you've explained this beautifully in your beautifully rushed way. It was still very, very clear. So you're a tremendous communicator. Thank you so much. And I am so looking forward to having you back on again. We'll put all those links that you mentioned in the show notes as well, so people can access them the minute they're stop listening to this podcast episode.
Yeah, I think what I'll do also is Professor Larkin wrote this beautiful piece. It's about 22 pages long called Dentistry Which Changes Lives, The Road Less Travelled. And I would like to give a copy of whoever wants that and listens to this podcast. So I'll give you the link for that too. It's a fabulous read, and the people that speak at the back end of it have been using his protocol for years. He's a very humble man. It's a beautifully written piece, and I'll give you the link for that too.
Appreciate it enormously. Enjoy going back and getting that microscope back off your friend. See if he'll give it away.
I'm actually going to go back and test myself, see if my protocol is working. So
good luck with your spirochetes.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. What are the worms? What are those worms doing there? God, you should see kids and parents when they see this stuff on the screen. It's so motivating. I love it. Anyway, Julie, thank you for the opportunity to let me sit here and do what every Italian woman loves to do, and that's just talk non-stop. I think I've reached my word quota today.
You certainly have, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, you should join the club. The club members receive an online lunch and learn every week where I share insights, systems and strategies to improve the success of your practice. These lunch and learns could not be easier. They are recording so you can watch them at a time that suits you. Members also have full access to the library of all of our past topics. The price is just $199 per month, and it is a powerful and effective way to upskill your team. I hope to see you there.